Hello and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of our flagship stations, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Lakes FM on 89.3 FM and lakesfm.com, Civic Center TV, Comcast Channel 15, and AT&T Channel 99 in West Bloomfield, Keagle Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and Orchard Lake Village. Also on Birmingham area municipal access, same TV channels, Comcast Channel 15, AT&T Channel 99 in Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and the village of Franklin. Today we're also on 88.1 WBFH The Biff, a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District, and thank Ron Whittables and the entire team over there for joining us once again on today's program and on Facebook via Facebook Live. We're on the page of my co-host, Ronnie Dahl.
So, Tyler, we need to switch that shot.
We do.
Because I'm sitting here, I'm like, I really don't really watch, but I'm like, man, the back of my hair, you know, I only really worry about the front.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, I'm like looking all wacky back there.
I don't know. It looks fine to me. I don't know. But I'm a guy. I'm a guy. I don't know anything about it.
So I will say that's the other thing there, Tyler. One thing guys don't get during this pandemic is the makeup thing with the mask. Mm-hmm. So, like when I come in, I try, like you do your makeup and then you come in, you put your mask on, and then you have to take your mask off. It's like some days I feel like I look like Joker because my lipstick is all smeared and it's all messed up and this, that, and the other. And I know a lot of people like makeup sales are down. Mm-hmm. Because of the pandemic, but I find that kind of surprising because I'm applying it more because the mask is constantly messing up my lipstick. So when I go out like to dinner with my girlfriends or this, that, and the other, you have to put your mask on, mask off, mask on, mask off, go into the bathroom, walk into the table, this, that, and the other. So I'm constantly reapplying my lipstick.
Yeah, I can't really sympathize with that because I've never been in that situation. But I can imagine how annoying that would be, or just something that would be, eating at you all day long because you got to wear your mask, and there are situations where you got to take your mask down or take your mask off briefly, and every time you're doing that, you got to reapply your makeup, and that doesn't just happen in a couple minutes, 30 seconds, whip it back right on there. It's a whole thing. So yeah, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of annoyance, and that's one thing I think that a lot of people that are wearing makeup on the regular are going to be very happy to be done with when the pandemic's done. Right.
So I will say one of the reasons I don't do the disposable mask because I would go through so many of them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But so I either do the neck gaiters, those are easy to pull up and down, but I also do the mask that my sister made, the Live Life mask, because you can open and close them. Mm-hmm. So if you're outside, you have to eat or drink, you can just do an open and then close it, and you don't have to take the mask on and off. But they're also washable. And so I must wash my mask constantly. Every load of laundry has like a stash of mask in it.
Yeah, a lot of people that are using the reusable masks have maybe 3 or 4 of them, maybe a handful of them that they're going to cycle through, but still, you're using them so often.
That's like 20. What do you mean 3 or 4?
I don't know a whole lot of people with a bunch of reusable masks. I'm around mostly people that are using the surgical ones, so I wouldn't know the exact number. It was a bad estimate, Ronnie.
No, girls, we have masks to match our outfits, Tyler.
Okay.
You don't just go out willy-nilly in a mask.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So, okay, fine. 20-so-odd masks that you're cycling through any given day, any given week, or several in a day. You got makeup all over them, so you got to wash that off so you're not having dry makeup on your mask, feeling disgusting as you're wiping the next set of makeup off. So I can imagine that being an extra annoyance.
Hey, how was your weekend?
Pretty good weekend. It was really nice outside. I was able to get outside for a while, both Saturday and Sunday. Yesterday, spent some time with my dad and my brother for the holiday. Enjoyed a late lunch outside on my dad's front driveway with my brother.
That's good. Does the Easter Bunny still come to your house?
Didn't see any evidence of the Easter Bunny this year. I think we scared it off, but we'll see.
So we did Easter dies. We made the Easter eggs on Saturday. It's the first time we've done it in years. My niece and nephew were home from college. So Easter dyeing is so fancy pants now. Like when we were little, you just put the little, droplet in a thing of water and then you let the eggs in it, right? Like fancy was if you took a crayon and wrote something on it. No, not now. My brother-in-law brought this machine. You put the egg in it, and then it turns on, and then it spins the egg, and then you use the marker to do like cool lines and everything on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so fancy. And then the other thing, I bought like the ones where you can glitter your eggs, but what you do is you actually, it makes a foam, so you can do it with Cool Whip or shaving cream as well.
Okay.
Put it, you know, put the Cool Whip shaving cream or the foam, and then you put the dye in it, mix it up, and then you dip the egg in it, and then take the Easter egg out, and then you can add, like we added glitter. But really, it's like, and then afterwards, we're like, who's eating all these eggs?
Yeah, that's the big question. Is you have all the, if you're using, especially if you're using real eggs, then you just got a bunch of painted eggs all over the place. You want to keep the decorations for a little bit because you put the work into that, you put the effort into it. It was all that time, all that fun, and then you don't want to just throw that stuff out. At least with some of the fake eggs, either paper mache or you use plastic eggs and stuff them and then paint them. There you can keep them a little bit longer because they're not going to go bad. But if you're using something like a hard-boiled egg, or if you're really daring and using a raw egg, then
well,
yeah.
We didn't do that, but so if anyone in the office here, all three of us, anyone wants some hard-boiled eggs, I have plenty right now because we were trying to hand them out like crazy because that's a lot of eggs to actually eat, but they were fun to decorate.
Yeah, well, fun to decorate, but tough to give out. I'm not a lot of people that you're going to go up to and say, "Hey, would you like some of these hard-boiled eggs I painted earlier today?" That they're perfectly fine to eat. Just get the paint off the shells and go right for it.
Well, you don't eat the shell.
I know you don't eat the shell. Of course you don't eat the shell. We're not crazy people over here, but I don't know. Handing out hard-boiled eggs, it's a tough bargain to get people to take.
You can't even hand out Easter candy right now, right?
No.
Like wrapped Easter candy. So it was funny because, last year, Easter, Peeps were not out because of COVID.
Right.
And so there was a shortage and they didn't have Peeps out on the store shelf. So this year, Peeps were out and they were flying off the shelves. I will say, I think they're gross.
I agree.
But usually, like if I would have a brunch or something, I would put like little s'mores packets together, and you put a little peep with a little piece of chocolate and some graham crackers, and then you do like a cute little tie or this, that, and the other, and you send people home. It's like a little favor, But the Easter Peeps, man, the store shelves were empty except for the hot tamale flavoring.
Yeah, I feel like that was an even worse idea. I mean, you can't really come up with many ideas that are worse they're less appetizing and more disgusting than just general Peeps. But they somehow found a way to do that this year with the hot tamale version of them. And then there was that other one that was all online, just an online promotion. You had to put in a certain code. I think it was Peeps flavored Pepsi.
What?
Which is also just sounds to me like the absolute worst idea possible. It's like it's for the people that go online and say, you know what I'd like a soft drink that just induces vomiting all by itself. That sounds disturbing.
It was interesting though, but I did see it's amazing what people do with Peeps. And some lady made this Easter dress out of Peeps, and it was really cute. I have to say, it was cute. But yeah, the hot tamale Peeps were the only ones left on the store shelves at Kroger down the road here on Orchard Lake over the weekend.
So if you're still interested,
you can get them at 50% off, I'm sure, right now,
probably.
right?
Yeah, I think so.
But in the middle of all of this, we have to remember, so last year, pretty much we didn't get together for the Easter celebration, but this year a lot of people did. There were a lot of church services in person as well. But amidst all of that, our COVID numbers are crazy right now here in the state of Michigan, Tyler.
Yeah, they've been getting worse and worse over the last several weeks, and we're still not entirely out of the spring break periods either with our schools. We're getting really close to the end of that. There's only really a couple more weeks that these schools, when their tapered spring breaks, are going to be going on. But we're still not in the offset of that and getting all those numbers coming back, as there certainly will be some impact on the COVID numbers in the state, but things are really not looking good in the state of Michigan, where we have previously been one of the better states in preventing COVID-19 cases. But we've seen a few times when these spikes come along, we are often a state that has either a major spike and then levels off and is in the middle of the road, or is one of the worst of the worst.
Well, we've been talking about it here on the show as well, about the governor and the restrictions, but she has been kind of dodging a lot of the questions from the media regarding that topic.
Yeah.
But this past Friday, she was at a press event, United Wholesale Mortgage. They are opening up a mass vaccination site over at their sports complex here in Oakland County. So the governor, though, said the solution to Michigan's highest in the nation COVID-19 spike rests with the state's residents, not leaders in Lansing. Whitmer made clear at a mass vaccination event in Oakland County that she has no intention of ordering new restrictions on the state's businesses and people, as she enacted during a surge of cases in the fall. Instead, she says, residents now have more tools to avoid COVID-19 getting vaccinated and continuing to adhere to longstanding guidelines, wearing masks, keeping social distance. So she said, you don't have a policy problem here in Michigan. According to the governor, you have a compliance, mobility, and variant problem, and that's why vaccines are so important. But unlike in the fall, when no one had been vaccinated, more than 2.8 million state residents have had at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, and the state is getting more and more vaccine doses each and every week. And so in the past week, more than 540,000 Michigan residents received a vaccine, 14 times more than those who contracted COVID-19 in the past week. Whitmer did acknowledge, though, her concern with the latter, but said she hopes, or her hopes rather, rest with the former, and that being the vaccines. I don't know about you. Maybe I'm just have been a journalist for way too long, and I am a cynic. Something doesn't seem right here to me.
No, it seems off to me too, because, and what really throws me off is the line, we don't have a policy problem in the state of Michigan. We have a compliance, mobility, and variant problem. Particularly with the compliance and the mobility issues, isn't that, especially the compliance issues, if people are not complying with these guidelines that are in place and have been in place from the start, isn't that the entire reason to put the regulations in place? Here, you can be responsible, you can do what you need to do to prevent cases of COVID-19, but if you don't, that's where we got to step in. That's that compromise between the personal responsibility model that you usually see with the GOP on the right and the government intervention model that you typically see with the Democratic Party on the left. That's kind of that interchanging relationship that we've kind of been hoping for this entire time, and now we're at a spot where the compliance is clearly not there. The mobility is definitely there, and while we have the vaccine as kind of that last-ditch fail-safe backup to help prevent a colossal spike instead of a major spike, this is a point where if the compliance isn't there and the cases continue to rise at a staggering rate, that's really where you need these regulations put in place more than any other time.
So something, I just feel like something's going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, or there's pressure from either the top coming out of D.C., because our numbers were better than this, and they were shutting things down left and right. So she's not shutting down the restaurants, and like you said, it's a compliance. Well, hasn't it always been a compliance issue?
Right.
We know people aren't going to comply, or we know as you open the schools, which you mandated by March 1st, as we start to ease the restrictions on restaurants, more and more people are going to go out. The numbers are going to go up, and you did that before, and you closed everything down.
Right.
So is this just a push to try to get more and more people vaccinated? I don't know. There's something going on here, but she is saying, and this is where the distrust in government comes from. situations such as this. You keep saying it's about the science and the data. Well, your data is telling you we're the worst in the nation. Why aren't you doing something?
Right. It seems to me like the pressures from within the state of Michigan, from all these different industries that have been frustrated with the shutdowns and the regulations throughout the pandemic, from D.C. as the Biden administration and powers that be high up in the Washington federal government want to open things back up as the vaccination process goes on, that either the governor's office has succumb to that pressure somewhat and is trying to be as limited as possible in further regulations regarding COVID-19, or that they are admitting that this is something that no matter what we do, people are still going to not comply, and we need to at least salvage the economy in the meantime by keeping things open, which is then an admission of wrongdoing earlier on, in which case come out and say we've realized that doesn't work, we're taking a different approach. So something does seem off here that we don't, and we're missing something in these details that may or may not be coming out as we get further along in this, especially if this spike continues on and nothing continues to be done by the executive branch of our government and continues to not be done by the legislative branch as well.
So, of course, today, Michigan vaccine eligibility opens up to 16 years and older. That begins today. We've been telling you about that throughout the past few weeks. Anyone 16 years and older eligible now for COVID-19 vaccine here in the state of Michigan. This comes at a time when Michigan is a hotbed for the COVID-19 cases. State Health Department reported 8,413 new COVID-19 cases, 57 deaths on Saturday. So they don't give numbers out on Sunday,
right,
which is the highest case total since December 4th. So in addition, surges like the ones currently happening here in the state are a distinct possibility in other states because of the spread of the UK variant of the virus and relaxing of social distancing mandates and increased mobility. That's according to a policy briefing from the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. So Michigan residents interested and eligible can now choose where to receive their vaccines, whether through city or county vaccine sites, through their health care provider, or at pharmacy chains. So one of the things I did do is we've been telling you about vaccinefinder.org. If you go on to that website, put in your zip code, and it will tell you the various locations that have some of the vaccines in stock. This compared to just a few weeks ago is eye-opening. We're getting more and more supply here in the state of Michigan. So I did it this morning for our zip code 48320, which is mainly, I think, Kiko and Sylvan.
Yes. But
just put in whatever. But Rite Aid here in Kiko Harbor, Walgreens, Rite Aid in Pontiac, Waterford Township. So all of them, Bloomfield Township, the Rite Aid here on Woodward and Bloomfield Township, Kroger, they all are showing that they have vaccine in stock right now, whereas just a couple of weeks ago, there was a very different story. You were showing maybe one or two locations. Pretty much all of them now are showing that they have the vaccine in stock. Keep in mind, if you go to this, you see it, you still need to contact that location and make an appointment because there could be a delay in the information here. But we do know the vaccine is becoming more and more widely available to pretty much everyone right now.
Yeah, and while there isn't necessarily any sort of a walk-in situation that's just on the onset with these locations, some of these locations like pharmacies and like even mass vaccination sites, we've seen a couple of times with the Ford Field mass vaccination site where they have extras at the end of the day, people miss their appointments, they have extra stock, whatever the case may be that leads to that they do then have walk-ins or availability, and we'll go over a loudspeaker in your pharmacy and say, hey, it's the end of our vaccine day, we have extra vaccine. If you have not been vaccinated yet, come on by, we'll get your information and we'll start your process. So keep looking. People keep looking for vaccine sites near you. You don't have to wait for Oakland County necessarily. It's a good place to start, but there are so many other places that you can be looking up and signing up for potential vaccination, and maybe even getting that pretty quickly as more vaccine comes into the state of Michigan and more locations pop up as well that are available vaccination sites.
And so we should keep in mind, 60 Minutes had a great piece last night, and we have to remember those that are seniors or people that don't have cars. They can't get out and they can't get around, and they don't have online. So everything is pushed to online right now, and I understand that, but we have to be respectful and understand that there's a generation that don't have the ability to go online, and those are the people that you're hoping they are not falling through the cracks. So one thing they are still saying is like, hey, give, put the people that are at the high risk or your seniors at the top of the list for all of these pharmacies and individual entities that are now delivering the vaccine.
Yeah, that should definitely be the case, because there's still a lot of people that are in those higher risk groups that were in those priority groups earlier on in the vaccination process that either slipped through the cracks or simply didn't get their appointments before things expanded. I have members of my own family that haven't gotten their vaccines and are in at-risk groups, and either things opened up quick enough in the vaccine process that they slipped through the cracks, or they simply haven't gotten that call from any of the outlets that they've signed up for. So hopefully these outlets do consider that as well as they're making appointments, and it's not a first come, first served necessarily thing. It's maybe that after these at-risk groups. As we've seen, COVID-19 cases tend to be more severe or become more severe more often in those at-risk groups, particularly our older populations.
So the FDA has now authorized 2 rapid coronavirus tests for home screening. We know there are several that have been on the market. However, these are different because you're going to be able to buy them at chain pharmacies and grocery stores without a prescription after the Food and Drug Administration authorized the 2 home tests. So one is the Buy Next Now coronavirus self-test. It's going to include 2 tests per kit. The no prescription test will deliver results within 15 minutes, does not require a lab. The FDA also authorized the QDel Quick View coronavirus test, which delivers results in 10 minutes and can also be used without a prescription. So you have to keep in mind there are a lot of these tests on the market right now. FDA has authorized more than 300 coronavirus tests and technologies in what's becoming an increasingly crowded field of medical labs and tech firms talking about these different technologies. But what makes these two so different is you don't have to send those results or the swabs off to a lab, which of course could then delay your results. So I look for those. They should be coming soon to a pharmacy near you, which I think is going to really make it a little bit easier for people if they're more comfortable doing the test in their own home.
Yeah, and for people that would like to be tested more often but don't want to continue to have to either make appointments to get tested, or are curious because they're around a lot of people often, or they have a busy week where they're out and about a lot more than they usually are, this is something that they can at least get tested at home and have a chance to have an idea of if they are COVID positive or COVID negative. And if they are positive, they can go get another PCR test that's maybe a little more accurate and is lab tested, and make sure and begin the quarantine period. So all these tests that we're going to be able to take at home with rapid results is certainly going to be welcome.
We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast on this Monday. When we come back, we'll be joined by our good friend Dave Dulio, the professor of political science and the director for the Center for Civic Engagement over at Oakland University. They have a great panel discussion coming up this week that we want to share with everyone out in the public so that you can tune in to some of the things that they're doing over there at the Center for Civic Engagement. This is the Oakland County Megacast.
Quitting smoking can improve your health, but it also protects your loved ones from secondhand smoke. Did you know there's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke? Smoke from cigarettes, e-cigs, and hookah can travel through ventilation systems and harm those around you. So clear the air and stop secondhand smoke. Call the Michigan Tobacco Quit Line at 1-800-784-8669. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
I
want to get back to seeing my grandbabies every Sunday and smothering them with big hugs and kisses.
I want to get back to football games with my boys.
I want to get back to feeling and touching, connecting with the people around me.
I want to get back to family dinners and my grandma's mac and cheese.
I want to get back to real grocery shopping, taking my time, walking down every aisle, smelling the tomatoes and melons, having a free sample or 2 or 3.
COVID-19 has changed how we live and how we feel. But now, there are vaccines. And they are the first step that let us get back to feeling optimistic about the days ahead of us. It's okay to have questions.
Is it safe?
Should I get it?
Should I wait?
Now, get the facts. Learn more at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Great to have you with us here on the Monday edition of the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. As a reminder, you can always catch us Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon live. Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. You can also tune us in to Channel 15 on Comcast, 99 on AT&T, and listen to us on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. Politics has been a major player throughout this pandemic. And as we try to work our way out of this crisis, it continues to be a headline. With us now to talk a little bit more, Dave Dulio. He's a professor of political science and director of the Center for Civic Engagement over at Oakland University. Always great to have you with us, Professor.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Before we kind of take a deep dive into the world of politics, I want to say congratulations to you and your team over there about your latest recognition for getting the students engaged in the election cycle and politics and voting. But how were you able to do this throughout the middle of a pandemic?
Well, thanks. We were recognized as a voter-friendly campus recently. We've done some great work with great partners. We have great support from our partners in the Oakland University Student Congress with different offices across the campus, right up to the president's office. President Peskovitz is a huge supporter of what we do and is always offering encouragement and her backing of the things we do. And we're no different than anybody else in the last year. We've had to just shift. We've had to adapt. And I think that, COVID stinks, right?
Right.
But I think that there's going to be some things that stick with us that are going to be positives. They're going to be benefits. I think that in the work that we do, I'm already thinking about, fingers crossed when we're back to quote normal in the fall, how can we deliver programming? How can we do events that is going to reach more people? And I think we're going to be in an era for the foreseeable future where we do things in a hybrid fashion, where we want to have people together in the same room again, no doubt about it. But I think we're gonna do things virtually as well, and combine the two to reach people who want to come out to events on campus, but also go directly to them in their homes.
What I've loved to see over the past year and a half was really the engagement in that younger generation, because they really are our future and we need them to be engaged. And do you think because of COVID, but also the George Floyd trial and his death has helped ignite some of that passion for them to get involved?
Oh, I think that those are two factors. I think there are others. I on both sides, because this is not just a one-sided thing. Donald Trump's candidacy for president, his campaign, his term, and his second campaign also really brought young people into the conversation. And I'll certainly most young people voted for Joe Biden, and before him, Hillary Clinton. However, I'll take you back to 2016 when I was one of the first attention getters for me on campus to look ahead to to Trump's victory were a number of students. I was shocked at the number of students who I talked to who said something like, I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary, but I'm voting for Trump.
Wow.
Right. And it was that was the exact reaction that I had. Right. And so it was all the way back to there where I think we can look at maybe one of the first flashpoints to get young people involved.
I really think politics right now is fascinating, and even more so than ever because everything that is attached to our lawmakers. And for the first time, I think some of the people are really they're starting to see the impact that our elected leaders have on our day-to-day lives. And but with that, there's so much not bipolar, but polarization. Some would say bipolar. Whitmer, I think, is going through a bipolar situation. But with that, though, we're so divided right now. And we've talked about that numerous times with you as well. But I love what you guys are doing coming up here for at the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University and the panel discussion to talk about basically trying to come together. And how do we do this? A path to civility. Is it even possible?
I think it is. I think that there is demand out there for not only the kind of conversation we're going to have tomorrow morning, but for that approach. And we've had a tremendous response to over the last couple of weeks where we've publicized this opportunity for folks to come and hear from 3 members of Congress, 2 of the most well-respected journalists in our state, for this conversation about defying the divide and finding a path to civility. I think there really is an appetite out there in the public for the conversation that's going to happen, but also the approach to lawmaking and approach to problem solving that it is possible. I'll leave it at that.
Well, there is hope for tomorrow. And it is springtime, and with spring is eternal hope. And with that, so I do find it pretty interesting. The members that are going to be a part of this panel, Slotkin, Dingle, and Upton, and they're members of the House of Representatives Problem Solvers Caucus. First, I'm like, it's kind of sad that we even need to have such a group.
Right. It isn't that what they're all there to do? Is
right.
Solve problems, right? I think that's a great.
Although I did think, like, did they steal the problem solvers? Like branding from Fox 2?
No, because Fox 2 actually solves problems. But
did they copyright that? Right. I mean, that's
right.
To, file the right paperwork. Yes, all 3 of these members are part of the Problem Solvers Caucus. And that was our decision rule on who to invite to this. Mm-hmm. Michigan, I think, is fortunate to have 5 members of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which, if for your viewers and listeners who don't know, is a group of bipartisan members of the House. And in order to become a member of this caucus, you have to bring somebody from the other side of the aisle with you. So they come in pairs. 1 Republican and 1 Democrat are permitted membership, if you will, at a time into this caucus, and they focus on, and you can go look them up on the web, but focus on finding ways to solve problems in a bipartisan manner, finding common ground, and putting together proposals in this bipartisan way. Michigan, as I said, has 5 of these members. The 3 you mentioned, plus Representative Stevens and Representative Meyer from the west side of the state. And we're thrilled that we could get 3 members' schedules to line up. We wanted all 5, and the scheduling, as you know, is incredibly difficult with members of Congress. We're delighted to have 3. And to talk about the Problem Solvers Caucus, their approach to coming at questions, coming at problems in a bipartisan manner, looking for ways that common ground can be found. And we're also delighted to have, as I said, 2 of the most well-respected journalists in the Metro Detroit area, probably in our state, Nolan Finley from the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson from the Detroit Public Radio, to serve as moderators. And we asked them to do this because they have started a project. It's called the Civility Project, about many of the same issues, right? Where and they'll talk about this tomorrow, I'm sure. Nolan and Stephen disagree about just about anything you can find politically, but they have a wonderful relationship, right? They maintain a friendship, they maintain a relationship, and that's also important for as we move into a governing time, between campaign cycles. Folks need to have that, to be able to understand that they can disagree with somebody. And if they do, that's okay. The other person isn't the devil. They're not evil just because they have a different opinion.
Dave Dulio with us here on the Megacast. He's a professor of political science and the director for the Center for Civic Engagement over at Oakland University. And I'm hoping a lot of this work is actually going on behind the scenes. We just don't hear about it because we know the pressure of the political parties as well. But with that, if we can kind of dip into a couple other conversations.
Sure.
There are so many things going on right now. I will say, Whitmer, I do. When I said bipolar, I'm like, what's happening right now with her? I'm a cynic, but all of a sudden, no restrictions, and our case numbers of COVID-19 are through the roof. We're leading the nation. Before, she would have been shutting down the state, but now she's saying, no, it's just a personal responsibility issue.
Yeah, I think that it's a totally fair question to ask. And one of the things I think would solve a lot of the issues that we're talking about is simple transparency, right? Yep. And early on, Governor Whitmer was out daily talking about case numbers and steps that the administration was taking. And maybe she's doing just a little bit less of that, but it's not nearly as covered or as available.
No, she's doing less. She's doing less.
Okay, so she's doing less.
Yeah.
I think that the public just wants to know the rationale. And if a different course has been chosen, just tell us about it. Right? Tell us why things seem to be operating differently under these circumstances than they were 12 months ago.
We've heard the terms, we're following the science and the data over and over and over again, but give us that science and data now behind your decision making. Otherwise, hopefully there is a very bored journalist out there who might start digging into the money, because I always say follow the money.
Yeah, right. Right.
The governor of Florida is getting hit with that right now. Follow the money. There's always money behind it when it comes to politics. And talking about money, Biden is out right now. President Biden is out pushing his $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan. They're throwing around these T's and the B's like it's water. And I'm like, who's paying for this? And is this a right time to talk about infrastructure? Totally agree. Our infrastructure here in the United States needs addressing. I have been covering, the state of some of our bridges in Ohio and Michigan for years, and you couldn't even get a blip on the radar. All of a sudden now, we need to fix it. Where's this money going to be coming from?
Well, it comes from several places. First of all, if the plan that the Biden administration has started to roll out is followed, you'll see a big tax increase on businesses, corporations, and folks with high incomes. So that would offset some of the cost. But look, the federal government spends trillions of dollars more than they take in every year.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to borrow it too. So we have creditors that are both domestic and foreign, but we borrow a bunch of money. The federal government's good at a number of things. Borrowing money is one of them. And our federal debt is approaching $30 trillion. Which is just a staggering number, and I think that it's important to note that The federal government has that power. They can borrow money, they can run a deficit. The state government doesn't have that option, right? The state of Michigan has to have a balanced budget every year. And much more, I would argue, much more difficult choices have to be made at the state level than at the federal level. There's much more wiggle room at the federal level when the Congress can say, well, let's just borrow some more money. Right, so that's usually how it happens.
Right.
And a proposal comes along. Okay, we need to borrow some more money.
So can I ask you, as a professor, what are your thoughts about the timing of this? Because we just did this big $1 trillion deal to try to address COVID. We're not out of a pandemic. What about the timing of all of this?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things going on, or we could talk about a couple factors there, right? First, you will have some folks who argue against raising taxes. Some folks argue against raising taxes anytime. Yeah. Others will say now is not the time when businesses are struggling, when the economy is fragile, maybe at best. Why don't do it? Don't raise taxes in a time of crisis. So that's a timing issue. I think the other one is that the Biden administration knows, frankly, it's got a short window to get some early wins, to get some early successes. And the COVID relief package was one of them. Although, we could talk about the way in which it happened as certainly an important factor there. But they're looking to get some of these big priorities done early in the term so they can hopefully, for their sake, build on them into the future.
I just find the timing so interesting. And while we're talking about some of the things going on, we, of course, have to mention the GOP and some of the changes to the law. The voting laws within the state of Georgia. The MLB just pulled out, and I worry too about, some of the businesses that are going to be taking a hit in the state of Georgia because of the changes in the laws, the voting laws, and some of these laws are being proposed here in the state of Michigan as well.
Yeah, there's this big battle between. And in many ways, it's a rhetorical battle. It's a messaging battle between the folks that talk about voting rights and election security, right? And those are often seen as diametrically opposed, and you can't have one if you have the other. And I, for one, I don't think that that's the case. We can have accessible elections that are also secure and that build confidence, right? Because one of the things that has come out of this 2020 cycle is a lack of confidence among pretty big sections of the public in election administration, election results, et cetera, et cetera.
So we know, obviously, this goes back to some people are comparing it to worse than the Jim Crow laws in the South back in the day. But I have to say, too, one of the issues at play is having to have a photo ID. And I really I'm trying to say, what really is the sticking point on that one? Because in today's world, we have to have a photo ID for everything. You have to, in some restaurants, you have to have a photo ID. If you don't give a photo ID, they're not going to let you come in. And so we're talking about something as basic as going in to eat dinner, or, you pretty much, so is more the communication we should be providing some type of state ID to people that are having troubles getting them?
Well, so this is one of the key points, right, about key flashpoints about this new law in Georgia, but it's also not terribly new. As you know, we have a voter ID law here in Michigan, and there are voter ID laws across the country in many, many states. One of the things that opponents to those point to is that it harkens back to the days of poll taxes. Yeah. Where in the South, up through the 60s, if you wanted to vote, you had to pay a poll tax. You had to pay to vote, right? Which is, and that was intentionally targeted at minority populations, specifically African Americans. So the idea that you have to have an ID, which costs money, is for some akin to a poll tax. But again, if we're gonna do what we talked about before, follow the science, right? The social science research that has been done on this topic doesn't indicate that voter ID laws affect any part of the population more than another. And I say that from a 30,000 foot view of this research. There are some studies that will say, yes, it does affect certain segments of the population, and others that say, other studies that say, no, it doesn't, right? So it's this mixed bag of research that has no real firm conclusion about it. So that's what the research tells us, that there isn't an effect. Now, you could find data that will tell you what you want to hear, but if we look at it from a sort of this meta perspective, it's not out there. So I think that's another thing that's important to remember.
Dave Dulio, professor of political science and the director for the Center for Civic Engagement over at Oakland University. Professor, before we say goodbye, tell us again how we can sign up for tomorrow's panel discussion. It's open to the general public, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everything we do at the center is for campus and community. That's what we want to, that's how we see ourselves. And if folks are interested in tomorrow's discussion, again, 10:30 to 11:30 tomorrow morning, 3 members of Congress, 2 predominant journalists in Michigan, they can just go to oakland.edu and all the information is there on the OU homepage. They'll be able to, through a couple clicks, sign up and get access to the Zoom webinar tomorrow.
So with that too, because we'll be on the show, so we won't be able to watch, it's going to be recorded so people can view it later?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, great. You guys are doing great work over there. Thank you for all of your work. Dave Dulio, professor of political science, director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. Always great having you, and we appreciate your expertise and your insight, as always.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast, and when we come back, we'll be speaking with the former president for the Chinese Association of West Michigan. That's next on the Oakland County Megacast.
Over a decade ago, the journey to a COVID vaccine began. Building upon research on other coronaviruses, scientists continued with months of research and development, 3 phases of clinical trials with tens of thousands of diverse volunteers, then peer review and authorization to deliver a safe and effective vaccine that will protect all of us. Discover the facts for yourself at michigan.gov/COVID vaccine.
Quitting smoking can improve your health, but it also protects your loved ones from secondhand smoke. Did you know there's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke? Smoke from cigarettes, e-cigs, and hookah can travel through ventilation systems and harm those around you. So clear the air and stop secondhand smoke. Call the Michigan Tobacco Quit Line at 1-800-784-8669. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Great to have you with us on the Megacast. As a reminder, you can always catch the show live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon. Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, Channel 15 if you have Comcast, 99 on AT&T. You can also listen to us on the radio. If you're out driving around in your car, tune us in, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. And then if you're unable to catch an episode, you can always check out the reruns. They do broadcast several times on Civic Center TV, but also just go to civiccentertv.com and you can find previous episodes. Just click on the Megacast or on demand for individual interviews. With us now, we're going to, so much is in the news right now about anti-Asian hate crimes. They're on a rise here in the United States and across the country, especially in the middle of the pandemic. To talk a little bit more, let's bring in Frank Jiang. He is the former president for the Chinese Association of West Michigan. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Can you tell us again more about the association and your mission?
Absolutely, yes. The CAWM, which stands for the Chinese Association of West Michigan, was a nonprofit organization founded in 1979, 42 years ago, to represent and promote the Chinese language, culture, and traditions among the Chinese community and the broader society in the West Michigan region. Currently, there are about hundreds of family members in the organization as of January of this year. And while most of the members are of Chinese descent, we do have more and more members that are of other ethnic backgrounds.
So by trying to talk about your culture and keep your culture alive, I wonder how this is working with generation after generation, because I know my niece, she was adopted from China, but also you have people like who say they want to Americanize their kids and they don't teach them the culture in from their native languages or native countries, whether it be Chinese or, Hispanic. And I feel like that's such a huge disservice to their kids. Do you find that in the Chinese area as well?
Yes, I do see your concern. I think there are some people, when they newly immigrate to this country, they are concerned about the kids not being able to assimilated or integrated into the society in terms of language and culture. But I think, personally, I think that's an unnecessary concern because, when they have this new reality, new environment, they'll just catch up very, very quickly, much quicker than we think. So I don't think it's a necessary concern.
What's the biggest struggle for some of the people that come from, China and other areas when they come to live in America?
Well, for a lot of the folks that are coming over to this country, depending on the situation, right? Some people are more prepared than others in terms of language, in terms of understanding the culture and the environment. If they are not as well, prepared, they would have a harder time understanding what's going on, spending time learning the language and understanding the way things are done in this country. So it's a matter of process.
Frank Jiang with us here on the Megacast. He is the former president for the Chinese Association of West Michigan. When I think of West Michigan, diversity is not really something that comes to the top of my mind.
Yeah, well, West Michigan, when we talk about West Michigan in our context, we're talking about the Greater Grand Rapids area, Muskegon, Holland, anything west of really Grand Rapids region.
And with that, is the community becoming more diverse?
Yes, we do have more members from other ethnic backgrounds, as I alluded earlier. So we have, most of them are still of Chinese descent, that's for sure, right? But then we have people from Caucasian background, some other Asian background being part of the organization. It's becoming diverse that way.
Oh, that's great, because I think it really is about a conversation, and the more people we can include in that conversation, in that community, the better we all come out of it. But with that, what's the past year been like for you and the other members of the organization throughout the pandemic?
What a year. I couldn't agree more, right? Like everybody else, personally, I've been locked down in my home with my children. Came back from California, that's where they are based. From last year until now, working from home, the 5 of us. And while it's very, very hard, for us, it's a blessing in disguise because we're able to spend, very much time with them, that we would not otherwise have the opportunity to do, right? Because they are adults, they have their career. But for the most part, it's very, very hard otherwise, right? Because we don't feel safe, and we have to wear masks going anywhere and trying to keep the social distance. just like everybody else. And for the community, of course, we are very aware of the risk of the COVID-19 pandemic, to our health, to the health of the society. So having, experienced, some of us having experienced that in China, and of course, watch our friends and families going through that. So we are very, very keenly aware of the risks involved. So we are very, very careful. So we, first of all, try to be safe, and then while we are being safe, we try to pivot to some online activities, right? Where we have to make some adjustments to the other activities that we have going on during the year.
We'll be so excited when we don't have to use that word pivot. Right?
I know, exactly, right? That's the new catch term, right?
But with that, if I could ask you, and sadly, there is a rise in the anti-Asian hate crimes and racist sentiments throughout COVID-19. And of course, we saw this earlier against Muslims. And how do you react, just as an individual, not even so much the organization, when this happens? How do you counter?
Well, to me, I was very, very greatly disturbed by what I see in this country in the past year, right? I know that racial discrimination is not anything new to this country. However, the level of skyrocketing of the anti-Asian crimes and sentiments are just amazing, right? And very, very sad, to see those Asian people, talking about, ladies of, advanced age, or gentlemen of, advanced age, suffering those kind of like physical, safety, right? It's just very, very concerning to me, just like how the whole organization feel about it too. And for me personally, I've been lucky enough to have not experienced anything of that nature in the past year or before, right? But I know that many other people that have gone through that, have encountered that kind of situation.
And it's sad, and my apologies to everyone in the community that are experiencing that. And one of the things that we try to hope is that through some of these situations and these incidents, it starts the conversation and it improves relationships, because before, a lot of people now, especially now, are afraid to even ask questions or to talk about our differences instead of celebrating our differences. So how do you take these situations and these moments to open up the dialogue with people that are from different backgrounds than you?
I think you're right on when you talk about the conversation and the dialogue. That's exactly what needs to happen, right? We need to talk about how we're different, and then at the same time we need to talk about how we are the same. Basically we're all human beings, right? We all strive forward, work hard, try to get ahead, right? At the same time, we all deserve to be treated with respect and with fairness. And what we have experienced with regard to the anti-Asian crimes, those are very concerning, because they are depriving, our human rights, to pursue the American dreams, right? And those needs to stop. And we need to have a conversation. We need to really get along, peacefully, right? And we should celebrate the differences. That's the strength for this country, right? It's not a liability. It's something that we should leverage to make this society a better place for everyone.
I love that you said that. It's a celebration, and it makes us stronger and it makes us better. That is so true. And we're also having these difficult conversations in the middle of a pandemic. But in one way, COVID-19 has taught us that we are all connected, because my breath that I breathe can impact you and the next person, the next person. So in one way, COVID is telling us we are all connected.
Literally, in this case, right?
Right.
Not just figurative, but literally, right? You know, we have to conduct in such a way, because our behavior have direct, you know, ramification to the other people, right? To the society, right? I mean, that's, you know, from that literal situation, I think you can imagine, our words, our behavior in this society, will have and would have far-reaching impact on the bigger society. It's bigger than you, right? So that's how we need to behave as a person, as a community in this bigger society of the United States.
Tell us a little bit more about some of the work that you've been doing, or that the organization has been doing, the Chinese Association of West Michigan.
We, as part of the big community, that we are in, we try to do our part, right? Mm-hmm. For example, during the COVID-19, we really mobilized our community members to do their part. For example, we raised $30,000 and we used our connections, with our families and friends in China to get the very hard to get PPEs at that time. You're talking about back last year, right? When the PPEs are very hard to get. So we were able to, to buy 13,400 some PPE equipments and donate those to the first responders. Most of them to the hospitals, the ERs, the emergency centers, and also to the other healthcare practitioners that need them, most, right? So we donated all of them to them. We also organized like what we call the love meals, right? To those ICUs and ERs and other people, right? And we to help uplift the morale of these first responders. We organized like handmade thank you cards from many children in the community, and to lift up the spirit, right? Because everybody is so spread so thin, and so we want to do our part, and that's just what we did like 200 free meals, right, to 4 local hospital ICUs and ERs, so that's just what we did. We also try to take care of ourselves too. For example, from last quarter of 2020, we added a program called health, what do you call that? The mental health program to address the mental health concerns related to the COVID-19 and those impacting the Asian youth, mm-hmm. right? So because like everyone, like being locked down for a year, you likely develop some needs in that regard, and we try to speak to that too. So.
Well, as you said, we're much luckier, and we should celebrate our differences and embrace our differences. So we so appreciate your time. You're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Frank Jiang with us here. He is the former president for the Chinese Association of West Michigan. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ronnie. Appreciate your having me.
And we also want to say thank you for all the work and everything that you're doing to help support the community. It is very much appreciated during this time, but let's hope we are on the backside of this pandemic.
I see silver lining in this whole thing now, with the vaccine being, normalized or being, implemented.
Right, and we are stronger when we work together.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much again. We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast. Still another hour of the show ahead for you. And when we come back, we are going to be talking about the zoo and the animals. This is the Oakland County Megacast.
Wearing a mask is more than protection. It's a bridge to better days. The path back to celebrations with family. Nights out on the town with friends. Game days with your favorite sports teams. And the thrill of live concerts. But until we can all get the COVID-19 vaccine and build community immunity, which will take time, we all need to continue to stay careful. Because Michigan's recovery is depending on you, and so are your family, friends, and neighbors. So even after you're vaccinated, wear a mask, avoid large gatherings, and social distance. One day in the near future, we will all be able to put this pandemic behind us. But until then, spread hope, not COVID. Learn more at michigan.gov/coronavirus. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Finally, I just got my COVID-19 vaccine.
I registered with my local health department and they called me.
I got mine at the pharmacy, and my neighbor got hers from the hospital.
I'm not a techie person, so I called the COVID hotline, and they helped me schedule an appointment.
Get vaccinated with the first vaccine you can. Protect us all.
Learn more at michigan.gov/COVID vaccine.
It's great to have you with us here on the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. We are here live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon. Tyler, every day I learn something new.
Yeah, so do I. We learn a lot on this show. We have a lot of great conversations, learn new information, and things that we don't even think about when it comes to the pandemic and just regular life as well, that we learn from experts all over our local community and other communities as well that affect us here in Oakland County.
So this programming started out of the pandemic at the very beginning as a way to try to bring you information because it's been changing. And when they started the show, they anticipated it was just going to be a couple of weeks. Well, here we are, a year later. Hopefully, we are coming out of the backside of the pandemic, but in the meantime, we're all still trying to navigate it. And with that, one thing so many people are trying to do is to really get out and explore the things that are in our backyards. And that includes going to the zoo. With us now, let's bring in Dennis Ladler. He is the education curator for the Potter Park Zoo in our fine city of Lansing, up at the state capitol. Dennis, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk about the zoo.
The zoo is my happy place, by the way.
Yeah, mine too.
So tell us, this is the first time we're having you on the show. Give us a back glimpse into the last year. What's it been like for you and members of the zoo?
Well, like everybody else, it's been a challenge. The zoo, due to the guidelines, was we closed to the public in mid-March, and then we opened again in early June when things eased a little bit. And during that time, obviously, we had to do a lot of changing and looking, and if we have time, we'll talk about what it means to be an accredited zoo. But accredited zoos across the United States shared the best strategies, things like which buildings maybe should be closed, how to do one-way trafficking, all those kinds of things. How often do we need to sanitize certain areas, all those kinds of things. So. And then my education team in mid-June, because schools couldn't come to us and we couldn't go to schools, we pretty much furloughed until about the start of February so that we could save our budget so we could jump back in anticipating that things would be getting better about now. And so that's what we've been doing.
So with that, though, at the end of the day, the animals still need to be fed. They still need to be cared for. So what was that side of the house like?
Well, again, animal welfare is our first concern for all of our animal residents here. So the animal care team, key maintenance staff, and obviously our medical team, our zoo vet and vet tech, they all were still here every day doing the things that they normally did with the animals. And then, we're learning that some animals are, non-human animals are very susceptible to COVID, usually not as serious with humans. But so again, there's additional protocols and PPE for our staff around certain species of the zoo also come into play.
Oh, because some of the animals can get COVID.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been such a crazy year. With that, though, we talk a lot about the mental side of this virus and the impact it's having on people. Does it have any impact on the zoo animals? Because especially for the ones that are kind of used to that human interaction to a degree.
Oh, yes, certainly. I mean, obviously, the animals are most familiar with the keepers that do their daily care, and they have the most close proximity with. But yeah, zoo animals have an incredible, what we call circadian rhythm. They know when the zoo is supposed to open, when it's supposed to close. And if we do an early morning or after morning, some kind of special event, you can see a different, they get real curious because they know this isn't how it normally happens. And so, yeah, the nice thing is when we started back up, because of restrictions and time ticketing, it wasn't like all of a sudden we went from no people to a big crowd. So they had a chance, just like all of us, to sort of get their feet wet back into the normal routine.
So if we can talk a little bit, since you've been able to reopen, what has been your crowd level like? Are you seeing people come from outside of your immediate area because people are trying to go to new places and different places?
Yeah, the nice thing about Lansing, we're about an hour to 90-minute drive from about 75 or 80% of the population of Michigan. So being centrally located, that makes, and the zoo's just off the freeway, so we're very easy to get to. That's an advantage for us. Yeah, obviously a lot of local people. And so the way our time ticketing works is we encourage people to get online and get their tickets time in advance, but we don't require that. Before we required it early on, before we had a little bit more ease restrictions and our numbers could be larger on site at the zoo. And the nice thing is zoos, most of what you see are outside. So that really gives us an advantage to venues. They have to do everything inside.
We're talking with Dennis Ladler. He is the education curator for the Potter Park Zoo in Lansing. With that, can we talk a little bit about fundraising and budgets? Because we know that typically zoos really rely on some of these fundraising events to help them with their bottom line. How is that looking right now for your zoo?
Accredited zoos and aquariums are each one is sort of set up differently, but yeah, obviously our gate was smaller overall because we had to be closed for a few months. The Potter Park Zoo has a partner organization, the Potter Park Zoological Society, which is the nonprofit that does the support for the zoo, the fundraising for the zoo special events. Actually, my education team, we work for the society, not technically a county employee with the zoo, but we all work seamlessly together. So, but we have separate budgets. So the zoo itself is funded by a millage from Ingham County. And so that money is dedicated, but we also rely on a certain amount of money coming from visitors through the gate and, spending money at the zoo. So we had to make accounts for that, but because, and that's actually one of the reasons that we furloughed the education team, because we wanted to make sure that the society budget was going to be strong enough so that we had cash flow. We came back. We don't realistically, other than maybe breaking even on summer camp, the education team won't be getting some of the revenue we normally get from school programming and some of the other things that we do the earliest next fall. So we want to make sure as we're doing all this that we were in a strong position. And the support has been awesome. We have record number of zoo memberships. Even during the pandemic when we were closed, people were buying them to support the zoo.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think most of our partner zoos around Michigan and throughout the United States have found similar kinds of things.
So with that, as you start to reopen, we're coming into the spring and summer. Are those your busiest times of the year?
Yeah, typically they are. Weather's nicer. Families, kids are usually out of school, so they have more time to do those kinds of things. Our summer camp, we just Friday evening made registration available, and it's we have COVID restrictions, so our camp classes will be smaller, and things like that. So they're going to fill probably pretty quickly. So we try to get the word out as equitably as we can, because last summer we couldn't have zoo camp, and it's one of the popular things for a lot of families to do.
What happens at zoo camp?
What happens at zoo camp?
Yeah.
Well, the nice thing is we spend a lot of time out in the zoo. So again, but we have to do some things. It depends. We do, like a lot of zoos, we have a summer zoo camp. It's a day camp. We have it for ages as young as 1st grade all the way up through 7th grade. And depending on the age and what class they take, there's one called Vet Med Junior, where you sort of get a feel for what it's like to be a zoo vet. There's one Grossology, so it talks about all the things that animals do and exude from their bodies that people find really gross, but why it's really cool and important, and the science behind it. Lots of fun. It is. They learn a lot, but it is summer camp, so we make sure there's lots of fun.
It sounds like fun. I was like, oh, I wish you had it for adults, until you said, Grossology or whatever. I'm like, no, I'll pass on that one.
They're electives. They're not mandatory that you choose Grossology.
With that, Dennis Laidler with us. He's the education curator over at Potter Park Zoo in Lansing. So many entities right now are having such a hard time hiring employees. Is the zoo experiencing the same problem right now?
A little bit, not nearly as much. Mostly it's seasonal help. We obviously, like most places, we're busier in the summer. Some things are only open during the summer, like concessions and things. So there's a little bit of that. Interestingly enough, today on either side of this, we're just finishing up all of our internship interviews for college interns that'll be working with the education department. And we've actually had a record number of internship applications. And that's probably because last summer they weren't able to do internships. Right. And some of the degrees, depending on what they are, require internships. So it's a good position for us to be in. We have some tough decisions. We have we have more highly qualified internship applicants than we have spots to fill. So, but I was talking with some of my counterparts in other parts of the United States at some of the larger zoos throughout the Midwest, for example, and they're having a real challenge. Part of it is because traditionally municipalities would pay the actual minimum wage, and so it's requiring us to get on the stick and get wages up a little bit better. That's part of it. Our particular case, our starting wages for summer seasonals in education were already above that, and surprisingly enough, I think we were the highest in the Ohio-Michigan region. So that's an advantage. But most of our internships are unpaid. It's a great learning experience, but yeah, it's a challenge.
Always a challenge. Dennis Laidler with us here on the Megacast. He is the education curator for Potter Park Zoo. If I've never been to that zoo, I'm looking to take my kids to something new. What makes Potter Park Zoo different?
Well, probably the most consistent comment or compliment we get from zoo visitors is how the close proximity you get to the animals. We're not the oldest zoo, but we're one of the oldest zoos in this region. And, that was one thing. COVID really put a kibosh on our, last year was our centennial. We had special centennial themed weekends planned throughout the entire summer. Ugh. So we are going to try to do a few of those scattered throughout this next year, because we did all the work to put them together. But, nothing we could do about it. But yeah, we've been around for a long time, but, I think some of our things that we're most proud of, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but our education team, which is also responsible for community engagement, and has been really, really successful in our educational programming. Zoos have evolved from menageries and collections and zoological gardens and parks, but in the last couple of decades especially, they've become centers of conservation education. And a lot of science, a lot of research, a lot of field work that is supported by zoos and aquariums throughout the world to help save species from extinction, help us do a better job of being environmentally sustainable here at home. And so that we have a program called the Big Zoo Lesson, which won a National Education Award. And the cool thing is it's an immersive learning experience. Elementary kids get to spend a full week, their class spends a full week being scientists at the zoo. They don't spend the night, but they spend every day here. They get to their home school, get on the bus, and spend the whole day with us for 5 consecutive days.
That's great.
Yeah, and there's always a trade-off in education. The more immersive and the more intense and the more hours that you're able to engage them, the fewer of those you can do. We can't do week-long experiences for every elementary class in our region, although we'd like to, just not physically possible to do that. So we do have to have a mix of different kinds of things. We still do some of the traditional get off the bus, have a field small learning trip at the zoo kind of things too, but we try to do a mix of things. We are one of the few zoos in the United States that have a high school course taught here on zoo grounds. We have about 40 juniors and seniors from about a dozen area high schools that spend 2 hours a day here every day of the school year.
So with that, Dennis, just another minute or two with you here on the Megacast. I have to ask you, what's your favorite animal? How do you even pick and choose, though?
My answer, people think it's a cop-out answer, but I can honestly say that I've never found an animal that I couldn't find something fascinating or interesting about. And if you don't, then it probably means you don't know enough about the animal. And if we're running out of time, would you guys like to see a live animal?
Sure, absolutely. We have about 30 seconds left. What do you have?
So, I have
fun job.
Guy.
Oh.
He's going to do a little dance, and I'll explain what he's doing.
This is so cool.
This is this just became an X-rated show.
Oh boy.
I'm going to kneel down here so you can see him a little better.
Okay.
So this is a Eurasian eagle owl, one of the largest kinds of owls in the world. He is imprinted on people, and this is the breeding season, so he's getting very amorous to the people that he spends a lot of time with. He's actually hooting a lot right now, but he hoots so much this time of year he loses his voice. Every time you see his white throat patch moving, he's actually hooting.
Wow. He's beautiful.
Yeah, he's a pretty amazing animal. And he's a great example of how accredited zoos work together. He was hatched out at a research center in St. Louis, Missouri 27 years ago, sent as a young bird to the Cincinnati Zoo, and they used him in their outdoor flighted bird of prey shows for about 7 or 8 years. And then they sort of used other animals, and so he was living in an off-exhibit area. So 17 years ago, he came to Potter Park Zoo, and he'll spend the rest of his life with us.
Well, how old is he again?
He'll be 27 in about a week.
Wow. It's amazing. You have the coolest job.
Yeah. Kids and animals can't go wrong there.
There you go. Dennis Laidler with us. He's the education curator at Potter Park Zoo. If you're out and about, so many people right now, Tyler, are looking for new things to do with their families. And I know we have the great zoo here just down the road, but I will say when you go to different zoos, Potter Park Zoo or the Toledo Zoo, you get to help support all of these entities and the work that they're doing to help save so many of these animals and also get educated. So Dennis, thank you again for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
We're gonna
say goodbye.
Okay, bye, Mr. Owl.
Bye.
What's his name, by the way?
Oslo, O-S-L-O, like the capital of Norway. The Cincinnati Zoo gave him that name because this subspecies of Eurasian eagle owl would be found in northern Europe in the wild.
Okay, Oslo. See you later. We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast, and when we come back, I'm so excited for this next interview. We're going to be talking about the Tuskegee Airmen next on the Megacast.
COVID-19 has caused many families to fall behind on finances and on groceries, but you're not alone. You shouldn't have to worry about putting food on the table. MyBridges offers access to quality food and income assistance to help families across the state get the food support they need. It's easy to apply and easy to start shopping. Apply for services at michigan.gov/MIBridges. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
I want to get back to seeing my grandbabies every Sunday and smothering them with big hugs and kisses.
I want to get back to football games with my boys.
I want to get back to feeling and touching, connecting with the people around me.
I want to get back to family dinners and my grandma's mac and cheese.
I want to get back to real grocery shopping, taking my time, walking down every aisle, smelling the tomatoes and melons, having a free sample or two, or 3.
COVID-19 has changed how we live and how we feel. But now, there are vaccines. And they are the first step that let us get back to feeling optimistic about the days ahead of us. It's okay to have questions.
Is it safe?
Should I get it?
Should I wait?
Now, get the facts. Learn more at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Right now, our country feels divided, but there's a place where people are coming together.
I was nervous to talk to someone so different than me.
Me too. Love Has No Labels and One Small Step are helping people with different political views, beliefs, and experiences connect through conversation, and it feels good.
This conversation gives me hope.
It gives me a lot of hope, too. Take a step toward bringing our country and your community together. Start a conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/onesmallstep. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
Over a decade ago, the journey to a COVID vaccine began. Building upon research on other coronaviruses, scientists continued with months of research and development, 3 phases of clinical trials with tens of thousands of diverse volunteers, then peer review and authorization to deliver a safe and effective vaccine that will protect all of us. Discover the facts for yourself at michigan.gov/COVID vaccine.
Great to have you with us here on the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Tyler Keefe. We want to just remind you, if for some reason you can't catch the full episode, we are live here in the studio 10 a.m. until noon. You can catch some of the rebroadcast on Channel 15 on Comcast 99 on AT&T, or just go over to the website, civiccentertv.com. Click on Megacast. There we post the full episode a little bit later in the day, or the on-demand section, and you can get the individual interviews. With us now, though, I'm so excited to have the next person with us. We're going to bring in Major William Bill Burnett. He is the chapter president for the Macon Thomas West Bloomfield chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen. Thank you so much, Major, for being with us.
Thank you, Ronnie, for having me, and good morning.
I will say the Tuskegee Airmen, it's a story that is close to my heart, and I'm hoping that everyone out there understands the story and the sacrifice that so many of these men made for our country. But for those that aren't familiar with the Tuskegee Airmen, can you give us a little bit of background?
Yes, Ronnie, and the main thing I want to cover is who are the Tuskegee Airmen and how we got started. At the inception of the war, World War II we're speaking of, men and women were coming all over the country to serve their country, and many wanted to be pilots, the majority, shall I say. So they converged on Tuskegee. And the men had no idea that the government would allow a black pilot training program. So the word got back to the White House, President Roosevelt, that they wanted a black training program to train pilots, to be black pilots, especially in the South. Well, many people surrounded the president just didn't want to have that. They didn't want to hear it. They want to talk about blacks being pilots in the United States. So Mrs. Roosevelt, the president's wife, decided with her friend, Mary McLeod Bethune, and everybody knows who Mary McLeod Bethune was. She's the co-founder of Bethune-Cookman College. Well, they set out to Tuskegee, and they wanted to find out if blacks could literally fly aircraft. So they found out after Mrs. Roosevelt got in one of the combat aircraft and went up for a test flight. When she came back, she called the president and told him, these men are ready to fly. Give them a chance. Well, the president said, if he's reelected, that he would start an all-black training program, but they would be trained at a segregated facility. Now, with that being said, with Tuskegee being in the South in a segregated area already, the Tuskegee, back then it was called Tuskegee Institute, which is now Tuskegee University. They decided that we'll give them a chance. So they started the training program there at Tuskegee, now known as Tuskegee University. And that's how the beginning of the program started at Tuskegee, and they got the name Tuskegee Airmen.
So it really is a fascinating story, but not only that, it's a sad story in our history as well. But can you tell us more about your chapter? Because what exactly is the Macon Thomas West Bloomfield chapter?
Back in 2012, I was president of the Detroit chapter, but we needed another chapter in the area. There was one in Lansing, of which the president had gotten up in age in their 90s, and the chapter was going down. So I sought out in the area to start another chapter. Being that I lived in West Bloomfield, I checked around, and the mayor, the police chief, and I found so many good friends in West Bloomfield, Debbie Binder, Terry Weingarten, and so many, and Chris Darcy. I found so many good people there with great diversity. I thought West Bloomfield would be a great place to start another chapter of Tuskegee Airmen. So I applied for a charter, and the charter was approved overwhelmingly, and that was in 2012, and we've been chartered in West Bloomfield since that time.
We're talking with Major Bill Burnett. He is the chapter president for the Macon Thomas West Bloomfield chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen. I was very lucky enough to be able to meet Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson in person, and keeping the story alive is so important right now, because we do know that so many of the original members of this program, and we should point out it wasn't just pilots, it was the support staff as well.
Absolutely.
They're becoming elderly, and we're losing so many of them. So it's so important to keep this story and their legacy alive. The Lieutenant Colonel Jefferson went on, he returned to the state of Michigan, went on to actually become a teacher and a principal in the city of Detroit. But he has a fascinating story where he talks about how he was shot down, became a POW, but and held captive for roughly 9 months by the Germans. And he says that he was actually treated better by the Germans than when he returned home. Because of the racism within our country. So it's so important to talk about this. What's the last year been like for you throughout the pandemic and trying to share this story?
This last year has been really devastating in that we had just begun our drone academy. American Airlines decided to send some people to New York and New Jersey to train to be directors, instructors in drone training all over the United States. So we sent a gentleman there to the training program. As a matter of fact, he became one of the highest scoring instructors in the training program. So we set out to start that program. We started it in Detroit, and it has become one of the greatest programs of all times. But with the COVID virus hitting us so hard, we had to suspend everything, and we had to sit it out. We're waiting on things to die down if we can get things going again, but this program is going to be one of the greatest in the areas where we train kids of all races, creeds, nationalities of how to fly drones. And it's going to be great.
So is really drones kind of the future of aviation?
I think so. We've got kids as young as 7 years of age who want to learn how to fly drones. But we started, because of our insurance, we started kids 10 through 17 last year, teaching them how to fly drones. The program kicked out so overwhelmingly, the Detroit School Board adopted it. We started it in the Detroit School District. Now we're doing it in the Inkster School District. We want to do it in the West Bloomfield School District. And it has really caught on, and it's going to be the thing of the future.
I love that you're seeing the future now and trying to train the next generation and doing it in some of these communities that maybe thought that this wasn't possible to talk about aviation. I mean, we're talking Google at some point and Amazon. They expect to be able to start delivering packages via drone. So it really is an economic future for so many of these people.
You know, we had one young man that really I met at one of the restaurants a couple of years ago who started out as a young man learning how to fly drones. Well, as he became an adult, he had become so proficient of it that he was one of the best in the areas. So real estate companies, mortgage companies, state police, local police authorities, movie production companies moved him to California. And he is making so much money now. His dad was a plant worker at one of the auto manufacturing plants. He hired his dad to work for him. So he bought a motorhome where they could travel. Then he stopped his mother from working. She also works for him. So they travel all over the country. The man is making so much money now, he can afford to pay his mother and father to work for him. And what he's doing is operating his drone business all over the United States.
So many opportunities in this arena. Major William Burnett with us. He's the chapter president for the Macon Thomas West Bloomfield chapter of Tuskegee Airmen. We know that the museum recently moved to the Charles Wright Museum downtown Detroit. Have you been to the new setup?
No, I have not. Now, this is one area where we have a museum in the Detroit area. It is a separate 501c3. Each organization, and there are 50 all over the United States, including Hawaii and Alaska. My goal is to build a state-of-the-art museum here in Oakland County, preferably in West Bloomfield or anywhere in Oakland County. We need it. We also want to attach to that a banquet facility where we can have banquets, commercial meetings, but we've got people donating equipment now for the museum, and we've got stuff going all the way back to World War II, fighter plane, B-52, B-27 cameras from planes. I've got stuff in my garage that when we get this thing going, we'll be ready to go.
Oh, that is so awesome. How
And
can people,
I'm sorry.
Because I would think donations are probably tough right now, fundraising because of COVID-19, but how can people try to find out more and get involved if they want to?
they can really contact me personally, or they can go to our website, is TAI-MaconThomas.org, or they can contact me at Major William Burnett. My phone number is 248-242-6293. And they can also mail any donation, any amount of money that they would love to donate. They can mail it to Tuskegee Airmen. Make your checks payable to Tuskegee, Tuskegee Airmen, AIRMEN, plural, Tuskegee Airmen, 6036 Petros, that's spelled with a P, Petros Drive, West Bloomfield, Michigan, 48324. We'd love to raise at least $3 million to have a state-of-the-art museum here in Oakland County.
So with that, Major, are you a nonprofit that those donations are tax deductible?
Yes, we are a 501c3 under the IRS code.
Any thoughts on where you're trying to put the museum?
Anywhere in Oakland County. It has to be on an area that would be accessible to traffic and safe for kids to attend.
We are talking with Major Bill Burnett with us here on the Megacast. He's the chapter president of the Macon Thomas West Bloomfield chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen. Just one more minute with you here on the Megacast. How'd you get so passionate about this topic?
I became president of the Tuskegee Airmen Detroit chapter back in 2009. And I started out as chairman of Ways and Means, worked my way up to public relations. And I was a very good friend of the Detroit Mayor, Coleman A. Young. And as you mentioned a moment ago, Colonel Alexander Jefferson, who was one of my mentors. These are great men, great leaders, and I got my start by knowing these men. So as I became more involved, there was more expected of me. So since 2009, I have worked my way up the chain and have become president since 2012. So I'm very passionate about what I do for kids, the community. And one thing that I have to say, back during World War II, racism kept us from doing anything that we wanted to do for this country, for America, that we love also. But we do not practice any racism today. Any child, any adult can join our organization as long as they do not have a current criminal record. We do not want people with a criminal record. If it has expunged from your record, you'll be okay. But we want to have good community relations, do good things for the community that we serve, and we have a good name and a great legacy that we have to uphold.
Well, Major Burnett, we so appreciate you, your time, but also the work that you're doing to not only keep the legacy and the story alive, but also to teach the next generation. Thank you so much again for being with us.
Thank you, Ronnie, for having me, and say hello to Larry.
I will.
Thank you for all you guys, and Keith, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Stay safe and stay healthy. We look forward to meeting you in person one day.
Thank you.
And also anyone that's out there, if you're listening, when we're talking about Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson, there is a book about his life. It's Red Tail Captured, Red Tail Free. Take a few minutes. You can, do an ebook download right now, or maybe try to check it out at the library. Fascinating story. He is still living here in the Metro Detroit area. He is 98, 99 right now. And I will say, Tyler, he is like he's a whippersnapper. He like had his iPhone. He's very big into technology at 98 years of age. So continue to support them and their legacy and everything that they've done for our nature. We're going to take a quick break here on the Megacast, and when we come back, we'll shift the conversation just a little bit and talking about remote learning. What is the world going to be like right now with the pandemic and the job opportunities that may be opening up because of the COVID-19 crisis? That's coming up next on the Oakland County Megacast.
Wearing a mask is more than protection. It's a bridge to better days. The path back to celebrations with family. Nights out on the town with friends. Game days with your favorite sports teams. And the thrill of live concerts. But until we can all get the COVID-19 vaccine and build community immunity, which will take time, we all need to continue to stay careful. Because Michigan's recovery is depending on you, and so are your family, friends, and neighbors. So even after you're vaccinated, wear a mask, avoid large gatherings, and social distance. One day in the near future, we will all be able to put this pandemic behind us. But until then, spread hope, not COVID. Learn more at michigan.gov/coronavirus. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
In times like these, we have to believe in each other.
And we believe that you'll do the right thing.
When it comes to stopping the spread of COVID.
Follow the 3 W's.
Wear a mask.
Wash your hands. Watch your distance.
And when it's your turn to get the vaccine, take your shot.
It all comes down to the golden rule.
Treat others the way you want to be treated.
We're so close, Michigan.
We can do this together.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. Just about 15 minutes left in the show. I think one of the great things to come out of the COVID-19 crisis is really how businesses are starting to rethink how they operate. Remote work is now not only a possibility, but it's become a reality. And I think a lot of businesses are going to start to realize this and keep it around. And with that, there is one company out of Oregon that is doing just that, and they're hiring people right here in the Metro Detroit area, FCR. And with that, let's go ahead and bring in the president of FCR, Matthew Alchuk, with us here on the Megacast. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
We want to say thank you for hiring people here in the Metro Detroit area, but before we get to that, give us a background on your company.
Okay. So like you said, we're Oregon-based, and my partner and I started the company about 16 years ago, and it was to sort of rethink outsourcing, just the whole concept around outsourcing. Outsourcing in general doesn't have, I would say, the best reputation. And what we were trying to say to ourselves back in, I think it was 2005, was, how could we convince companies to, instead of sending their work overseas or commoditizing it, could we change that lens, change that perspective, that perception of how it's taken a look at, and instead, could we maybe get them to explore looking at small towns in the US? And so we started in a little town called Roseburg, and it's in Southern Oregon. And we really just grew from there, and the idea sort of blossomed, and it became more about finding a very, more boring work, and instead it was focused on, let's find tech companies, let's find disruptors, let's find startups. And this was the age of venture capital really exploding, private equity, a lot of startups, like the Airbnbs and the Dropboxes and the DoorDashes were starting to take hold. The gig economy was really becoming a thing. And we really got lucky, and we convinced a couple companies the benefits of US-based labor, and specifically smaller towns where the work would be appreciated. We put work in there that had more meaning. We built a much more welcoming environment. So, you know, it didn't matter about your age or your race or your sexual orientation, the color of your skin. All we cared about was just finding good people who were willing to stick around. And we just started growing, Ronnie, and it became a real interesting growth curve because we didn't expect to be more than maybe 100 people. And today, I think we're close to 3,000 people. So we're in Oregon, we're in Montana, we're in Wyoming, Idaho, Tennessee, North Carolina, Poland, Mexico, the Philippines, and of course, Michigan.
I'm looking at all those states that you just listed. I'm like, North Carolina sounds good right now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, especially when you're from the Northwest. It's just raining.
So with that, what has the thought process been behind your clients, though? Are they more open to you expanding and hiring remote workers than maybe before?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you would have told me 3 years ago that your entire organization was going to be remote, I would have told you you're crazy because we'd already considered that model. We didn't like it for a few reasons. Specifically, the challenge was how do you maintain a company culture when everybody's in a disparate location? It's very challenging. And even to this day, I think many companies are trying to unlock that. But with the pandemic, you can either give up or you can soldier on and you can reinvent yourself, which is what we did. And so as soon as we saw it happening, I think we were the first company to basically say, we're going from fully centralized in on-prem locations to a completely decentralized environment where everybody would be working from home. We did it for a number of reasons. I mean, the biggest one, frankly, was the health of our employees. We saw our sites continually getting compromised, and we just thought that was not a sustainable model. And so we went in a 2-week period. We moved everybody in late 2019. Early 20. I'm trying to get.
I know the days are all blending together. It's Groundhog Year.
Whatever it was, we went as fast as possible. It was about 2 weeks, and everybody was work from home. And it was a learning process because you were getting into questions like, all right, does their internet speed, is it going to work? Do they have enough room to work? Will it be impacted by their families or by their pets? Were their kids going to be in school? Were they going to be at home? And so it's become a much more sustainable environment. We've learned a ton, and now we're exploring many other ways to use this going forward. Even when we exit the pandemic, we will still be in some form a work from home environment. It'll probably be in some sort of a hybridized model where it'll be something like half and half, but it will always be a part of FCR.
And do you find that right now it's so much more acceptable for people to be working at home? We almost enjoy those interruptions from the kids or the pets barking because it breaks up and makes you more human.
It does humanize it when the golden retriever walks in the background. Right. The toddler kind of comes up behind somebody on the Zoom. It really has leveled the playing field. You know, historically, it's really unfair when you think about the history of work from home because it's been something that has only been accessible by executives who are typically paid more, who are given the flexibility. Once we sort of opened up that box and we gave everybody sort of a glimpse into what the potential was, I'll put it this way. We actually asked everyone, I ask everyone on my cultural sessions each week, how many of you would like to come back into sites versus how many of you would like to stay work from home? And at the highest point, it was 95% wanted to stay work from home. At the lowest point, it was about 85%.
Wow.
Yeah. So that gives you a feel for how people are viewing it. They like it. They like not having to commute. They like not having to, consider this, we didn't have a flu season this year. Every year we have flu season. Every year flu runs rampant through our sites. You have 300 people in a site. It's impossible for it not to happen because people have children being home, germs from school or from daycare, and they pass it on to their parents who bring it into the sites. We were never interrupted by flu season, and a lot of people didn't get sick, and they really appreciated that.
I'm so happy that we have you on because I have so many questions. And if we could talk about that from your standpoint as the president, what is the cost saving to your company to be able to offer remote learning or remote teaching, remote work? I'm sorry, we talked to so many teachers and parents and everything else.
Yeah, remote everything. The biggest cost savings, I think, is a go forward mentality, which when you take the short-term lens, we actually are losing money because we have all of these sites that we have put a substantial amount of money to build, all this infrastructure that we've built around an on-premise environment. But in a go-forward model, you can really rethink just the entire concept of what does this model get to look like. Forget about what it used to look like, because you don't have to play by that game plan anymore. You can really rethink everything. For instance, you can say, what if I build smaller? What if I build more spread out? What if I only bring back 20% in some town? What if I build and integrate inside local colleges or community colleges? What if I build in WeWorks or co-working spaces? What if I completely rethink how I'm letting people come back? Some people are working in benches, some people are working in hangout areas. All of a sudden, it becomes very different. What if you put everybody on laptops so that they can go back and forth? Yeah, it becomes a very different environment. The go-forward cost savings could be quite substantial if you build it correctly, but you have to manage it correctly as well, because you have to make sure people still are motivated to get up, get out of bed, come to work. It's very different.
Right. There are two different sides to that. I remember listening to a TED Talks years ago he was a president CEO of a manufacturing company, and he was talking about this, like getting rid of the building. He's like, I only want you to produce this much. This is how my plan is. I don't care where you do it or if you do it in 4 hours or 8 hours. This is what I want you to produce. And trying to really realign and re-engage the discussion around just that remote work and getting rid of that office building, going into the setting and opening up like pods throughout the city and the community for people to be able to work wherever they need to work. Because we do know some people aren't productive at home, especially with so many kids learning at home. Maybe they do need like an office setting, like a WeWorks, where you just go in and you pop in and that's their sanctuary for the day. But getting rid of these big office buildings. But on the backside, we know that so many companies right now are struggling trying to get employees. But does being able to offer this remote work model, is it helping you to attract quality applicants right now?
Yeah, and I'll caveat first, I'll say it breaks my heart that we can't go back to the same model, and yet I'm actually very happy because part of me is glad that I can keep people safer in their home environment. But the whole reason we started the company was to rebuild small towns, and the way we did it was by centralizing our sites into the core of the town. And so when you put 300 to 400 people who are walking around the downtown of a Great Falls or a Butte or a Roseburg or an Independence or a Veneta, all of a sudden you see this sort of really neat golden circle start building where you have more walking traffic, more stores start opening up, more people are spending money. That was always the idea when we built the company. And we're not going to go back to that. It'll be a much smaller scale. So part of me is very sad, but a part of me is really fascinated by the future possibilities if you start rethinking everything around it. And yeah, it's been interesting finding people who can do this work from home. Not everybody can, because you need the space to do it. You need the high-speed internet access to do it. You need the ability to manage your family. It's challenging. As somebody who has 2 children who are doing remote learning right now, it's not easy. It's a constant struggle every day. But I think most companies and even most customers of companies are very open to the challenges around it because they're suffering those same challenges as well. So every organization right now that sends work to us, they're having those same problems. They can't bring people back. Their people are working from home. Their families are being impacted. Their children are trying to go to school but can't go to school. I would say the most interesting aspect about it is it's allowed us to expand faster and further than we ever could have previously, because we don't have to build first. We can say to ourselves, you know what, we would like to improve the diversity of FCR. We would like to add more people of color. Let's go to places like Detroit and Romulus and Southfield. Let's go fast. Let's go now. Let's not worry about, oh my gosh, do we need to build a building and do we need to do this research? No, let's connect with local business leaders. It's the right thing to do. It's the right time to do it. Let's find communities that fit well within FCR. Let's introduce this concept to our existing clients and let's go. And so you can go fast. I mean, we announced North Carolina, and then we were into North Carolina within, I think, 2 months. You can go that fast.
Well, just about 20 seconds left here in the show. We want to say thank you for your time. Matthew Alchuk with us here. He's the president of FCR. They are hiring right now. And we want to say thank you because I know that you just expanded into Romulus, into our area as well. If you want to find out more about the company, the work they're doing, and also hiring, go to gofcr.com. Thank you again so much for your time.
I tell them, please go to careers.gofcr.com. We are hiring. We're looking for great people. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. That's going to wrap it up for the Monday edition of the Megacast.